Date point. 4th year, 9th month, 2nd week, AV. Fall for colony, Simbrine. The far reaches. Gabriel Ares.
Hey, Dad?
Gabriel turned and smiled weakly at him. He'd been watching the memorial stone being placed, a solid slab of blue slate, imported from Earth and engraved. Sacred to the memory of a child of Earth, and to all of those who shine with her among the stars.
Hey,
he croaked.
I have a question.
Gabriel's weak smile remained and he nodded, a little sadly. Figured you would. You can see it, can't you? The thread linking her and all the others.
Yeah, and I'm guessing you can't tell me the details.
Gabriel nodded.
I'm sorry. Don't be. Just tell me what I need to do.
Adam.
I need to know, Dad. So tell me what I have to do. How do I earn it?
Gabriel closed his eyes and nodded, then hugged his son as hard as he could. Hey, amigo.
Yeah?
You're a tougher man than I am. I'm not just proud of you, okay? I respect you. Adam softened just a little and returned the hug.
Yo también te respeto, he replied.
Gabriel nodded, then straightened, as much as he could around his faulty leg. Go talk to Powell, he said. That's how you start earning it. Date point. 4th year, 9th month, 3rd week, AV. Aru Utam, Planet Aru, Elder Space. Lesrie.
Ooh, now that thing looks like a mover.
Leslie had to admit that it did. If the black sphere, which made up probably 80% of the craft's mass, was his power core, then even with an old-fashioned distorted space, apparent linear velocity drive, it would have been blindingly fast. Leslie, however, had a few of the high-end firmware upgrades to the implants in his optic nerves that were available only to ranking directorate scientists, and they were reporting that the ship had one of the black box engines, which meant, at a very rough mental calculation, that he may well be looking at the fastest vessel in the galaxy. The few rather more refined calculations that he bounced off his cerebral coprocessors confirmed that he almost certainly was. It landed easily enough, settling down to thrum gently on force fields as it finished its descent level with the same bridge that his own history paradox was parked upon, extending a gangplank to link the laughably small amount of ship that wasn't power core to the shore.
Somebody unusual visiting us, he said. Look busy. If I'm oppressed, I might throw in a small bonus.
That one never failed to get the hired workers motivated, and they threw themselves into the cataloguing and loading as he tucked his thumbs into the belt of his sand robes and took his time wandering over to the end of the arriving ship's gangplank. He wasn't expecting the human who strode down it, with an expression that promised serious pain to anything in his way, nor the other two, rather paler ones, who followed after him shouting what was presumably his name. Nor was he expecting one of the most famous beings in the galaxy behind them.
Well, Counselor Atkinson, you have a talent for making an entrance, he observed, having to raise his voice to compete with the untranslated barking sounds the humans were making at each other.
Atkinson produced an old-fashioned translation device from a satchel and held it idly in one of his stronger hands as he finished crossing the bridge.
Not by choice, he said. May I take it that I'm addressing the leader of this expedition? Thank you for meeting me in person.
Co-leader, Leslie admitted, both intrigued by Atkinson's apparent lack of a translate implant and pleased by his manners.
Had I known one of the more, notorious politicians was coming, I would have torn my colleague Nada away from her research as well, and believe me, that's not a risk that the same being would take lightly.
Atkinson chuckled deep in his lanky throat.
I'm retired now. This is a personal project, he said. Collecting Deathworlders. Most beings start smaller, with Gritka, or perhaps a pet Vulza. It's an entertaining hobby, and I recommend it.
Leslie allowed himself the luxury of a stab of amusement.
Well, the most we have here is an unaccountably sturdy Gallian who wears concealing robes, he said. She's our chef. I do hope she doesn't turn out to be a human in disguise or something tiresome like that. This expedition will be far less pleasant without her culinary talents.
Atkinson blinked at him.
Information so freely volunteered? He asked. My thanks. I suspect that you would have found her more or less instantly anyway, Leslie said, and inclined his head towards Shu. After all, she is brandishing a knife at that dark-skinned human you brought with you.
Date point: 4th year, 9th month, 3rd week, AV. Amuru Utan, Planetaru, Elder Space. Shu. You stay the hell away from me, Zane! He started to babble at him. In that same dense Patrois, and Shu's temper eroded even further. Shut up! Shut up and fuck off! She screamed. The blonde woman, and oh god was Shu happy to see a fellow female, stepped forward and said something a little too quietly for Shu to catch, but it did the trick. He paused, then stepped backwards, eyes still fixed on her, then spat in the dirt, spun, and stalked off between the scattering aliens. The blonde woman exhaled, then turned to her. Zhu Chang, I presume, she said. It was so weird hearing somebody pronounce her name correctly. Zhu put the knife down. Hey, she said. It wasn't what she'd imagined saying when she finally got back in touch with the human race. The real human race, not Zane. But then again, nothing in the last 4 years or so had gone like she had imagined. So why should greetings? You've got to be swaddling in that disguise, said another voice, a male one from slightly behind her. She grabbed the knife and spun, prompting the man who had snuck up on her to back off, raising his hands defensively. Whoa, whoa, he protested. Easy. Zhu lowered the knife, cautiously. This one was hot. Okay, she thought the same thing about Zane when they had first met, but this guy... She shook it off. Handsome didn't mean trustworthy. Nor did female, come to think of it, but if she was ever going to get home, she'd have to trust somebody a little, wouldn't she? She put the knife down again, and Mr. Hanson nodded and circled around to join Blonde Girl. Just making sure you didn't stab him, he said. That didn't exactly endear him to Shu, but she understood. Sure where you? What me Shu? She said. That earned her a pair of blank looks until she realized that she spoke in Gaulian rather than English. Yes, my name's Zhu, she said. Sorry, it's been since I last... 5 years? Not counting that guy? The blonde said, smiling. It's okay, I understand. My name's Allison. This is Julian. Zhu blinked. I had a friend called Allison, she said. Back on Earth. That detail seemed more relevant in her head than it did in the conversation, but she really was out of her depth here. Would you like to see her again? This Allison asked her. Zhu looked at the ship they had arrived in, and it finally hit her. A ship. They had a ship, and these were humans from Earth who had come here in that ship. From Earth. Suddenly, she couldn't see a thing through the tears. They had a ship. She could go home. Date point: 4th year, 9th month, 3rd week, AV. Fall for colony, Simbrine, the far reaches. Adam Aries. Hey, Adam. Lexi always had a friendly manner about him, which Adam liked. He'd shown plenty of intensity while training the militia, but outside of that role, Lexi was pure earthy charm and humour. It made militia training a charm, and while a lot of the colonists preferred not to use the gym at the same time as the soldiers, Adam found he really didn't mind being outperformed by them. They served as examples of what he might one day be able to manage himself. It also meant that he and Lexi practically had the gym to themselves, which was perfect for what he had in mind. Hey, Lex. Adam watched the older man swing his kettlebell around. Lexi trained for endurance, and while Adam had seen people like Mark Tisdale working with more impressive weights, Lexi could apparently go all day, working his way steadily up and down through the set until he was red and reflected with sweat, but never seeming to tire. Adam himself was still working up to that. He elected to use the cross-trainer instead. Lexi gave him an encouraging grin and nod as the device swirled into action. So, I've got a question, Adam asked, after what he judged was a decent interval. Go for it, pal. What the hell is going on? How do you mean? Home. Sarah. How come they're not pressing charges? There's a pattern there, I can see it. Lexi didn't answer at first, just continued to swing his weight, but his expression had clamped down beautifully. Yeah, I reckon you can, he decided. I can't tell you, though. No, I know, Adam agreed, but Dad said if I want to know what's going on, then I need to talk to Captain Powell. Lexi really was an open book. He had so many different blank expressions. This one said that there was something serious going on with Powell at the moment, that he, Lexi, was not comfortable discussing. I'd give him a few days, he said at last. It's rough on an officer when a knob he commanded ends that way, right? He gave me a bit of a row the other day. Did you deserve it? Adam asked. Legsy laughed, but his heart wasn't as in it as it usually was. Maybe he was tamping, he said. Usually in a Welshism, that Adam had deduced meant something like furious. I'd give it a few days, but let him simmer down. I'll get you in to see him when the time's right, fair? Thanks, Legs. No worries, pal. Now come on. I know you can go faster than that. Adam quickened his pace and settled his mind, enjoying the heat building in his muscles. He felt like he'd just set his first foot out the door on the journey. Date point. 4th year. 9th month. 3rd week. AV. Starship Sanctuary. Planet Aru. Elder Space. Alison Bueller. What do you think? Zhu had been introduced to a vacant room, on the opposite side of the ship from Zane's, and next door to Alison's, and was, from the sound of it, busy taxing the abilities of Sanctuary's water recycler with a hot shower. Julian and Alison were, by mutual unspoken agreement, hanging out at the junction down the deck, where they could make sure Zane didn't try to get at her, be on hand should she need them, and converse unhurt. About what now? Julian asked. About Zhu herself, or about whatever went down between her and Zane? Zhu herself for now. Julian thought about it. At first glance, I was thinking damaged goods, he confessed, and pressed on when Alison made a noise and nodded. But here's the thing, though, he said. She's in great shape. She's kept up her exercise and ate right, and that puts her a cut above most everyone else out here. Physically, she's perfectly fine, give or take a few scars. Mentally, I don't know. What does 5 years alone with nobody but raccoon people to talk to do? She was 19 when she was abducted. Then there's the... He checked to make sure nobody was listening, then lowered his voice anyway, even though none were. The Hunters. And the Nerve Jam. Yeah, I read her file, Alison agreed. She saved a whole starship. Took on one of the big Hunter ships solo. That's... Shit, that's big damn hero stuff. She frowned at him. But you'll want to talk. What does 6 years alone with nobody but trees to talk to do? It fucks with your head, Julian said, honestly. You've always seemed fine to me. We've not slept together yet. You mean actual sleep, right? Yeah. Can't even do it without an axe next to my hand, Julian told her. And I wake up at the slightest noise, reaching for it. Do you snore? Alison shook her head. I don't think so. Why? Lewis does. That's why I moved away from his room. I kept thinking there was a murder pig near my camp. Murder pig? This big. Julian held out, a hand at rib height. This long. He stretched his arms as wide as they would go, teeth like this. He drew one of his knives, and it hates you. Murder pig. He put the knife back in his sheath. You came up against shit like that? Yeah. Lucky for me, it's all nose with a murder pig. Their eyesight's fucking awful and they snore when they breathe, like a fat guy asleep on the bus. Getting the drop on them's easy. Good eating on them, too. But if there was one near the camp, I needed to be up and armed like that. He snapped his fingers. What happened if you didn't? I never didn't. If I ever hadn't, then we'd have never met. Oh. Damn, Julian. It was only for like 4 months out of the year. Rest of the time, Nightmare was nice and quiet. I used to... Hey, she's done. Zhu had poked her head out of her room, wearing a towel and a blush. Hey, are my new clothes ready? She asked. I just realized how nasty those robes are. I'll go check, Julian told her, and trotted down the stairs. Alison turned to talk with Zhu, and noticed that their recent rescue was watching Julian with cat-like fascination as he went, her blush deepening and spreading to her ears. Alison couldn't blame her. Julian had an amazing ass, but that couldn't be allowed. Sorry, girlfriend. I'm not into sharing, she said, not unkindly. Zhu blinked, then coughed. Sorry, you guys are... Yeah, we are. How are you feeling? Clean, Zhu said, rebounding. I mean, my own actual shower, with real shampoo and conditioner. Alison laughed. With hair like yours, I can see why you'd miss those, she said. Don't expect miracles with the clothes, though. It's all practical stuff, not decorative. She grinned. Unless you can rock a pair of yoga pants. If it fits properly and breathes, I'll be happy, Zhu promised. We'll be going back to Earth soon, right? We don't need to. All we need to do is get to a station with an FTL relay and schedule in a race end with Scotch Creek. Huh? Alison paused. Okay, so I'm not exactly Miss Technobabble, she said, but did you ever see this old TV show, Stargate? Sure. My brother Wade bought all the DVDs on eBay. Well, we kind of got one of those downstairs, Allison said. But, less dramatic. It's called a jump array. Neat piece of kit. Shu gaped at her. Wait, so you could send me home right now? She asked. Not right now, no. We need to get to a station with an FTL relay, send a message to Earth via Simbrine, wait for... Where? Simbrine. Humanity's first colony world. You didn't hear about it? Shu made a strange ducking motion with her head, then blinked and carefully shrugged, or shaking her head, as if remembering the gesture. I didn't really pay attention to the news, she confessed. It just got me down. There's not much about humans in the news, and it's never good when there is. Yeah? It was always about how we would bring the hunters down on them and get them all killed, she elaborated. But how does this Simbrine place protect itself? Allison grinned. You know that big force field protecting Earth? Protecting it? Yeah. It sure as hell isn't containing us, but it's stopping the bad guys from getting in. Anyway, Julian stole one. Shu blinked. That's Julian? She asked, pointing after him. Yep. Actually, he stole two. Wow, so, where's the other one? Kirk won't say. Shu sighed. So we need to get a message to Earth. Via Simbrine. And then we have to wait for them to get back to us and say, sure, send on this date at this time using this code. And then, bam, you'll be back in Canada. Just like that? Unless you decide to stay, yeah, Allison told her. Why would I want to stay out here? Why would you want to go back? Allison retorted. What? It's home, Shu said. Allison nodded, a little sadly. That's fine, and if that's what matters to you... Sorry, I shouldn't have even mentioned it. It'd just be nice to have another girl on board. I guess, Shu said, but I had my dreams. I was going to be an actress. I still could be if I go home now. Allison kept to herself the fact that Zhu was going to need a lot of post-production and makeup to cover all the scars she seemed to have picked up during her time away from home. There were a lot of them. The ragged tears down her forearm were the largest and most disfiguring, but the one that kept drawing Allison's attention was a little raised inch-long mark on Zhu's neck, dangerously close to her carotid artery. She was spared the discomfort of the conversation tailing off by Julian's return, as he handed across the clothes the nanofactory had printed to Zhu's measurements. 4 simple black sports t-shirts, 2 equally simple navy blue fatigues, 4 changes of undecorated but comfortable underwear, a dark grey fleece sweater, 4 pairs of thick socks, and a pair of hiking boots. Here you go, he said, handing them over. Not exactly red carpet stuff, but it's warm and comfortable. You can clean them real easy, just rinse them and hang them up. Lewis can show you how to program the nanofac later if you want a bit of variety. Zhu took them gratefully. Thanks. So, you want to be an actress? Allison called through her door, after she had shut it. Yeah, that's why I took up Kung Fu. I wanted to be in martial arts movies. Zhu called back. No drama or anything? This was met with a bitter "huh" from behind the door. Have you ever heard of a Chinese version of Downtown Abbey? She asked. Not in America, Allison confessed. Exactly. Hey, these are a good fit. Lewis figured out how to lift your measurements from the biofilter field, Julian said. Bespoke tailored printed clothing. Neat, ain't it? Do they have stuff like this back on Earth now? Zhu asked. Not yet. I mean, 4 years and change isn't that long anyway, and this is alien technology. Zhu opened the door so she could finish talking to them unimpeded as she pulled on her boots. Yeah, but we've got spaceships and a colony and stuff now, she said. I think a lot of what comes out of Scotch Creek is just copying and pasting, Julian confessed. We've been bitten in the ass a few times by now, especially with the first-generation translator implants, and what happened to San Diego. Zhu stood up from tying her laces, frowning. Why? She asked. What happened to San Diego? Date point. 4th year, 9th month, 3rd week, AV. Starship Sanctuary, Planet Arrow, Elder Space. Lewis. Hey, Amir? Yes? What do you think went down with Zhu and Zane, anyhow? Amir sighed and set aside his checklist. Self-maintaining and robust those sanctuary systems were, he felt safer for manually checking them while landed. Why the fascination? He asked. It seems cut and dry to me. You think? I knew men like Zane back in Birmingham, Amir said. All ego, very intense. Charming if they liked you, but if you irritated them. You did? Sure, Amir replied. My cousin was married to such a man. Lewis nodded sagely. Good-looking dude turned on the charm, huh? Got her wrapped around his finger before he turned it off again? Sort of. Arranged marriages didn't go away just because my grandparents left Pakistan, you know. They just brought them to England. Wait, shit. Your cousin had to marry some dude? Lewis protested. That's not cool. She didn't have to, Amir corrected him. That would be forced marriage. But the marriage was arranged between his parents and my uncle, and he coughed. Well, she didn't think too hard about it. Were you cool with that? Oh, it happened after my abduction. I had the pleasure of meeting the husband after getting back. I didn't like him. And Malisha was a different person to what I remembered, very subdued. I'm sure she even flinched a little bit when he raised his voice. So, not cool with it then. Amir sighed. It's a good arrangement, he said. He's a dentist, she cooks, cleans, looks after the 3 children. A traditional marriage. Her parents are very happy. So, you're not cool with it then? She was 16, Amir admitted. Ah, shit. Is that even legal? Oh yes, perfectly legal, Amir said. English law only requires parental consent for 16-year-olds, even if the husband is more like 30. Damn. I get the same vibe of Zane as I do of my cousin's husband, Amir said. That same pride. Is there anything in his file? Let me check, Lewis said, followed seconds later by, Hey, Kirk encrypted it. He what? Yeah, locked the shit down tight too. No breaking it, no way, no how. How'd you know it was him? Lewis gave him a tired, pleased look. I'm the only other dude on this boat who could, and I didn't. Amir got out of the flight chair and went to look over Lewis's shoulder. Why would he encrypt Zane's file? I'm gonna ask him, Lewis said. Worst case, he says he's not telling us. Go for it. Kirk responded to Lewis's summons a few minutes later. Something come up? He asked. Sort of, Amir said. You encrypted Zane's file? It seemed like a good idea, Kirk replied. I didn't want people to read it and become prejudiced against him. This is supposed to be a welcoming ship. Why would we be prejudiced? Lewis asked. Kirk made the noise that was his species' version of a resigned sigh. The quality experiments of the last 50 years or so were beginning to focus on human weaknesses, he revealed. Genetic disorders, mutations, personality disorders, mental illness. So, Zane's got, maybe a personality disorder of some kind? Amir asked. I'm not saying. I don't want to exasperate the friction between him and Shu by prejudicing the rest of you against him. Well and good, but if he's dangerous... You're proving my case, Kirk pointed out. You all took an instant disliking to him. That's acceptable. I don't much like him either. But he still deserves his privacy and unbiased treatment. He's not actually done anything other than be unpleasant. Lewis and Amir shared looks that mutually said, he's got a point. Alright, cool. You've got a strong argument there, boss, Lewis finally admitted. Thank you. Where is Zane right now, anyway? Lewis ran a search script. Not aboard. Last seen, 10 seconds after we landed. He tapped again. No, there's Vedrick, he added. Date point. 4th year, 9th month, 3rd week, AV. Fall for colony, Simbrine, the far reaches. Ava Rios. The Tisdale house was a mess. Ava couldn't blame them. In fact, she knew exactly how they felt. After the bomb which killed her parents, it had taken weeks before she began to notice things like mess, rumpled clothing, and the state of her hair again. The first night she had run a brush through it had been a painful one, both physically and emotionally, extracting a tangle that had been well on its way to becoming a dreadlock. Dr. Haley Tisdale, at least, was fortunate enough to have straight hair, which would help there, but she was still a mess when she opened the door, wearing food-stained pajamas and red eyes. Ava? Ava lifted the box she was holding. Gabriel was able to get Sarah's stuff back from the military. Haley stared at the box like it was simultaneously the most beautiful and the terrifying thing in all creation. Oh, can I come in? Haley nodded, quietly, and stepped inside. The clutter about the place was just... stuff. Things that had been left where they were no longer useful. Clothes, mugs, a few bowls and plates, but not many. They weren't eating much. Ava knew how that felt. You just weren't interested. You grab books, then discard them, pick things up just to put them down again. There were a lot of wine glasses around, though, and the house reeked of alcohol, plus another scent that she hadn't smelled since high school back in California. She didn't know how that one felt. Ava didn't know how they'd even managed to get cannabis on Simbrine, but she wasn't about to comment. The smell was stale, as if they hadn't indulged for some time. Haley swept aside an arrangement of small crystals and semi-precious stones on the table to make room for the box. Sarah hadn't had much on her when she died. and her bloodstained clothing had tactfully been omitted. What was left was a tiny assortment of jewellery. Sarah had been addicted to rings, and had always worn her birthstone, an emerald, as a necklace. There were a trio of the same kind of crystals that her mother had just swept aside: her phone, spare batteries, and a micro-SD card for her camera, and the camera itself. Hayley didn't say a word. She just picked up the camera with trembling hands, turned it on after a second's investigation to figure out how it worked, and started to scroll through the pictures her daughter had taken. Ava grabbed a brush and gently started to sort out the worst of Hayley's hair, watching the screen herself. It was a catalogue of the changing face of Fogfur, playing backwards. Brown dirt, tree stumps, and grey construction sites gave way to a bloom of life here and there. Sarah had been gifted with a knife for finding beauty, and for showing it off to its best advantage, finding the little flowering plants that were still struggling gamely against the Deathworld invasion, or the forester, whose high-vis jacket and yellow hard hat practically shone against the lifeless stack of felled logs he was leaning against. Things got greener, more alive, and Sarah had continued to pick out whatever was most alive in each scene. A cloud of little iridescent shimmerflies, a creature that lives somewhere halfway between squirrel and lizard, stuffing nuts into a pouch in his back. The curve of Ava's own naked back, the little hairs and the bumps of her vertebrae luminous with the light of a setting sun that was framed by her coiled lock of wet hair. She hadn't even noticed Sarah take that picture. There were no pictures of Sarah herself, though. She had only ever used the camera to record what happened around her, never turned it on herself. Finally, Hayley set the device aside with a sigh. I don't believe it, she confessed. I know, Ava replied. How do you cope? How do I think the only thing that keeps me going is that I've still got Jack to look after. Ava's brush never stopped, but the rest of her did for a second. I think you just have to keep the people you've lost alive, she said. Live for them. Carry on their work. Have you? Hayley asked. You lost your parents. Do you think you're keeping them alive? I hope so, Ava said. I try to be somebody they're proud of. I try to get better and move forward because I knew it had hurt them to see me in pain. Do you think Sarah... Hayley aborted the question, half-formed. Ava gave her a little hug. She loved you both, she told Hayley. She talked about you a lot, about the things you said, about what you taught her. She did? Oh yeah. Ava laughed slightly. It was hard to get her to stop. That prompted a miserable laugh from Hayley, too. She always was a motor-mouth. Ava smiled and put the brush down. With the tangles gone and some of her hair's shine restored, Hayley was already looking much improved. Hopefully she'd see that in a mirror, and it would help her, just a little. It had for Ava. Hayley picked up the camera, and then unexpectedly, she turned and handed it to Ava. Keep it, she said. Me? Please. It's a way to keep her alive. Ava took the little black device nervously. Are you sure? Hayley nodded, and then gave Ava a kiss on the forehead. Honey, she said, you're a wiser girl than I am. Maybe you can... She trailed off, then just looked down and shook her head. Just take it, please. I think she'd want you to have it. It just feels right. Carry on her work. Ava considered the picture on the screen at that moment. Simbrine sunlight, somehow turning the industrial devastation around Fogfur pretty, just by being framed a certain way, and doubted that she was up to the job. But she had been wondering where to take her life. Now that movie makeup wasn't an option, maybe... Thank you, Hayley, she said. She meant it.